what we had was the government came in this afternoon, and Michel Barnier, the French Prime Minister, he used a constitutional procedure called Article 49.3, where you adopt a bill without a vote. In other words, you say the government is taking its responsibility. This bill becomes law, and Parliament doesn't vote on it. But what that does is that opens up the government to a no confidence vote. And so what's happened is the government has adopted a budget bill. It's for part of the budget. It's not the whole thing. This is just for the Social Security portion of the budget. But they adopt now the National Rally and a coalition of left have either filed or are going to file no confidence motions against this government. Now, the way it works in France is that there has to be at least 48 hours between the time you filed that motion and when it can be voted on. So between now and Wednesday evening, we're sort of in a holding pattern. And from that point on, there could be an actual no confidence motion in the French Parliament that could then throw out Michel Barnier's government.
Okay, you mentioned Michel Barnier's government. He's a relatively new prime minister, but he may go down as one of the shortest serving PMs in France. What about Emmanuel Macron? I mean, what is his standing? And at the end of the day, isn't he kind of the one calling the shots?
So normally, yes, but Emmanuel Macron dissolved Parliament back in June. And we had elections, and the parliament that was elected at the time was split really between sort of three camps, basically a left, center, and far right camp. And as a result, Macron's party and its allies no longer had a majority or even a sort of a relative majority in parliament. They became actually relatively small in parliament. And that suddenly switched the French system from basically a presidential system to basically a parliamentary system. What that means is that Macron is still in office. No one can force him out. He could resign if he wanted to, but he can't be pushed out. You sort of think of him like a U.S. president. But Parliament suddenly, where you have to pass bills like the House and the Senate, became controlled. Well, it wasn't really controlled by anybody. And so the person Macron ended up naming, Michel Barnier, just a few months ago, as you mentioned, isn't from Macron's party. He agrees with Macron on lots of things, but disagrees with him on others. And even Barnier had no sort of majority within Parliament. And so what we're coming to is that to even pass the most basic of legislation, right? What we'd call like must-pass bills in the United States, the budget, he's unable to get a group of legislators large enough to be able to pass that budget. And even if then he uses this constitutional measure to pass it without a vote, he's opened himself up to a no confidence motion that he's very likely to lose because the left-wing coalition plus this far-right party, the National Rally, are going to come together. They've said that they're going to vote against Barnier for this, which means they're extremely likely to have an absolute majority. That means at least 289 votes in Parliament, and that they really will push him out of office. And so Macron has very little authority in all of this. His position remains, but he can't really affect how this plays out, at least over the next few days.